Hello, hello. These are flipped notes 2-7, and we are digging into the endocrine system and all about hormones. My Bitmoji is currently crushing over here because her hormones have taken over, and hormones play a big role in desire and love. So let's get to it. So, the endocrine system is just one way that our brain communicates with the body. We have mainly focused on the nervous system and the sending of messages through neurons, through neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. But the endocrine system plays just as important of a role, but it's a little bit different. The endocrine system is the body's slow chemical communication system. When we say slow, it's only in relation to how fast the nervous system is. So it can still be very quick, just not quite as lightning quick as the nervous system. The endocrine system sends its messages through glands that secrete hormones into the bloodstream. So when we say endocrine, we're talking about glands that are sending hormones through blood. The other glands you may be familiar with, like sweat glands, your tear ducts, salivary glands, those are sending out hormones and all kinds of substances through exocrine glands. So our focus here are endocrine glands, so they are internal. A few key things here in this diagram. We've got the brain here because the brain is still in charge of the endocrine system, specifically the hypothalamus. So we've talked about the 4 F's of the hypothalamus: fight, flight, feeding, and fun times, or sexual desire. And all of those things are controlled by the hypothalamus because the hypothalamus can control the endocrine system. And those are all things that happen in the endocrine system. The hypothalamus controls the pituitary gland, and then the pituitary gland controls all of these others. The thyroid by our neck, the thymus by our lungs, your adrenal glands by your kidneys, your pancreas also by the kidneys, and your ovaries and testes. So we'll get to each of those. So the pituitary gland is located in the brain. It's just this little bitty pea-sized gland right here next to the hypothalamus, because the hypothalamus is the boss of the pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland is the master gland, which means it tells all the other glands what to do. It produces hormones for the thyroid. It tells the adrenal glands to produce adrenaline, other hormones responsible for growth and sexual maturation. So pituitary gland, super important. So I already said that this is the other system that the brain uses. So let's compare and contrast those. So both the nervous system and the endocrine system are controlled by the brain. The nervous system, and this was kind of described in a crash course video, but it's like sending a text message. The nervous system messages are pretty much instantaneous. They're super duper fast. They're traveling through neurons, neural impulses, action potentials that are releasing neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine. The endocrine system is like writing a letter and sending it in the mail. It's still going to deliver a message, but it's going to take a little bit longer to get there. But if you got, a text that was sort of like a, hey, baby, you look great today, versus a nice, well written love letter in the mail, both would be great to receive, but the effect and the memory of that letter that came in the mail would probably be a little bit longer lasting. So the endocrine message takes a little bit longer, but often that the effect of it is that it stays longer. And that's just because those hormones are moving through the bloodstream, and going through the bloodstream takes a little bit longer. And then the endocrine system is controlled by the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. So hormones are the big messengers in the endocrine system. The nervous system, it's the neurotransmitters, which are also chemical messengers. But these are our slower messengers, and they're slower because they're moving through the blood. So they're mostly manufactured by the actual endocrine glands that are all throughout the body, not just in the brain. They're produced in one tissue, and then they can affect another area, including the brain. They can influence a wide variety of things, including sex, food, aggression, and some of them are actually chemically identical to neurotransmitters. So, for example, norepinephrine, which we know plays a major role in the fight or flight response and is a neurotransmitter, is pretty much identical to adrenaline, which is the hormone chemical form that moves through the blood. Adrenaline will have a longer lasting effect because it is traveling through the blood. So sometimes when you've had a fright and you calm down, you start to calm down because you consciously realize, oh, okay, there's nothing really to be scared of, but your heart rate is still racing. That's because that adrenaline is taking a little bit longer to finish processing through the blood. So the hormone effects usually outlast the effects of the neural messages. A few others that were not on that original slide, the pineal gland is actually located in the brain. And I think we've mentioned all of these other ones already. But parathyroid is also located in the neck. But again, the glands, these are affecting behavior, but they're not just in the brain. They're all over the body. So a few of the most important ones that we highlight in psych because they do have an effect on behavior. Again, the pituitary gland mainly regulates growth and it controls all the other endocrine glands. The adrenal glands sit right on top of the kidneys. They secrete epinephrine and norepinephrine or adrenaline. So that releases adrenaline and it helps to arouse the body in times of stress. The thyroid gland is in our neck. And its main job is to regulate metabolism, which is the processing of nutrients that the body receives and converting it into energy. But it plays a major role in physical growth and development, calcium rate. You may have heard of the thyroid relating to two conditions, hyperthyroidism and hypothyroidism. So hyper, the prefix usually means faster. So like hyperactive. So hyperthyroidism is when the thyroid is processing and your metabolism is too high. And you may think, how can that be a problem? We want high metabolism, but it starts to metabolize food so fast that the body can't gather nutrients from it. So people who have hyperthyroidism have a hard time actually keeping body weight on, and they lose too much weight. Hypothyroidism is when the thyroid is producing and metabolizing too slowly. So often the main symptom of that is weight gain. Sometimes the thyroid just can't quite get a balance right, and people will kind of fluctuate back and forth between being overweight and underweight. So the thyroid really sensitive to hormones, which it is a releasing hormones. The pineal gland, as mentioned a little bit earlier, is located in the brain, pretty close here to the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus. And its big job is to produce melatonin. And melatonin is what helps to regulate your circadian rhythms, primarily your sleep cycles. We'll actually talk about that in another section coming up real soon. Melatonin is real responsive to exposure to light. So when it starts to get dark, your brain starts to release melatonin, saying it's time to sleep. Our next one, did I skip one? No, are the gonads. So gonads are something that both males and females have, but we have different versions. Females have ovaries and males have testes. Both males and females gonads help to regulate bodily development of secondary sexual characteristics. So these are things that usually change when a person hits puberty. So for males, voice changing. For females, the development of breasts. For both males and females, body hair all over the place. So all those different characteristics that change as we start to get older. And then the gonads also produce the hormones necessary for the development of our reproductive organs. So for males, it's helping to develop sperm, and for females, it's developing eggs. The actual hormones that are being produced by the gonads in the ovaries, it's for females, it's estrogen and progesterone, and for males in the testes, producing testosterone. One more, and that is the pancreas. The pancreas is very large. I think it's the largest of the endocrine glands. And a lot of people actually think of it as an organ because it is so big, but it is a gland because it produces a hormone, specifically insulin. And the main job of the pancreas is to regulate levels of sugar or glucose in the blood. People who are diabetic have a malfunctioning pancreas, and they're often not able to produce the correct amounts of insulin, and they treat their disorder by either taking insulin through pills or insulin injections to help process the sugar that's going through their blood. So that's it for hormones that we focus on in the endocrine system in psychology. The hypothalamus controls the pituitary gland, which controls the thyroid, parathyroid, pancreas over here in between the kidneys, the adrenal glands over here on top of the kidneys, the thymus, which was not a key one, but that one helps with our immunity. And then the gonads of ovaries, and this is a female diagram, so we don't have testes on here. And that's it for flipped notes 2-7.